Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host, Ilmus, and I have with me the Clown Prince of Giants, Travis Snell. How are you doing, my friend?
Hello. No, I'm doing good. It's a nice Monday. It's somewhat sunny here now. It was rainy, but now it's sunny. It's gonna be all over this week. But I'm doing well. It's fun. We were just talking about Summer Games Fest is coming up.
Yeah.
We got Star Wars Acolyte for the GV side. So there's a lot of fun things coming up in June. We kept talking about June, and now it's here. Does not feel like it's June. Like I'm still in May mode, but now that it's here, it's like, oh yeah, we got lots of fun stuff coming up for video games and TV shows. It's more video game TV show this month. So
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for this month. Today's episode, we're going to talk about Hellblade and the state of play from last week. But yeah, it's good to kind of look forward a little bit. This weekend is all the Summer Game Fest, the kickoff, and all the Xbox event, and all these things. I'm a little salty because I feel like the last few years he's done it on a Thursday,
Yes.
Keeley, and that was kind of what I always had in my mind. And so going in, I would cut it on a coverage of it Thursday night, but I'm going camping this weekend. It's on Friday this year, so we're not going to cover it until the side quest afterwards. So we're going to be a little late, but that way we can kind of gather everything together potentially. We'll see. We don't even know how we're going to do it because I was just looking at the calendar on his website, and he's got June 7th, the kickoff event, Day of the Devs, some other random thing. And then there's June 8th, there's the Future of Play and the Wholesome Direct, and a couple other smaller directs, and the Future Games Show. And then on the 9th is the Xbox event and the PC Game Show. And then on the 10th is Ubisoft Forward. So it's just like a barrage of stuff. And I don't think Nintendo has announced
I was gonna ask
when
you
their
that,
thing
yeah.
is yet. They said they're doing one this summer, but they have been kind of doing it a bit later than other
Yeah.
people recently, from what I can remember in the summer one. So
Seems like PlayStation
Yeah.
goes early, Nintendo goes usually like a week or two after, and then Keeley and everybody else is still in that E3 weekend. So E3's dead, but people are still kind of keeping that spirit somewhat alive. So
yeah, so I'm guessing we'll probably kind of split and have two episodes, like an Xbox focused one and then Summer Game Fest and other things. And then if Ubisoft's a bit later, then we might even kick back to the week after. We'll see how it goes. But just
and even
stay
if they have
tuned to the
anything,
feeds.
right? Like if it's just like an Assassin's Creed trailer, well, we can just have Taylor talk about that quickly. Like if it's because
Yeah.
sometimes some conferences don't have much to talk about. They can make
That's
a
true.
big deal, but it doesn't mean there's going to be something. So
Yeah, so moral of the story is subscribe to the feeds to keep up to date because we're going to drop that as soon as it's done recording rather than waiting to the SideQuest Tuesday and stuff. I'll put it up as soon as possible, so stay tuned for that. And then as Travis alluded to, this is the month of TV shows. House of Dragons is kicking off. What are the other ones? There's Star Wars Acolyte, and then what's the third thing?
The Boys.
The Boys, yeah. So all sorts of TV shows this month. You can check out my game. It's on Steam, Potion Problem. Join the Discord. Any other shout outs, Travis? We're doing the retro of Alien right now, so that's a good thing on the Patreon.
yeah, no, I think that's about it. Yeah, I think you'll get your regulars. I think just with our schedules, I don't think there's going to be an After 9 in June, but we'll probably do one in July and August. And maybe in the fall when things quiet down, maybe we'll do a makeup and do like a 2-in-1 month. It's just tough
Right.
with like everybody's either traveling or time off or families in town stuff. So we will try to do that relatively soon. But no, I think that's the biggest stuff happening on the feeds right now. So
Okay, so with that, how about we jump right into the latest state of play, which I think was announced like even just a couple days before it dropped. So I don't know. I guess not a whole lot of lead up to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like even going into PlayStation 4 this year, they said that like, oh yeah, we're not gonna have any first party games coming out for the rest of the year. So I feel like to me, I was like, I would not have even been shocked if they didn't have a state of play at all in the classic summer slot. So it's cool that they did have one. What was your overall take on this state of play?
See, I'll go the reverse where like I guess it's cool to have one, but I don't think so. I think I'm in the Foggy realm where there was a couple like 2 years in a row they didn't go to Comic-Con, then they finally came back and he said we never want to come here if we don't have anything to show. And that's a little bit different because it's a show, they pay for it, a stage. This is just an easy 40-minute video you live stream, right? So it's not that big a deal, but I think it's still like about perception. I think the perception was, it just felt, because it's strange. There's this narrative I feel about more Xbox, but just Xbox and PlayStation that, man, gaming's really bad right now. It's really down and they're really not bringing it home. And you look at what PS5 is selling. It's still selling very well. There's still the
apparently it's the most profitable console they've ever made. I
Yeah.
just saw an article of today, which
There's
is
still
crazy.
this stat too of like how many people are just actively playing and buying stuff on their PS4. Like, it doesn't matter if we're moved past it. It's like, so it's thing of like, I don't think that narrative is a true thing, but it does feed into that of like, man, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, right? Those state of plays or whatever showcase. Think about E3 3-4 years ago, and then to this, it's like the fact, and Astro Boy looks really cool, but the fact that that's the only Astrobot. So sorry, I don't know if he's a boy, so we'll find that out. But if the fact, usually that would be like, oh, the 5th or 6th thing of like, that looks really cool in a Sony state of play. The fact that that's number 1 to me shows, okay, I don't think it's the Jurassic Park quote, no one asked if they should before they could, and I don't think I think they should have just had Astrobot at Summer's Games Fest, have really cool show. Like, everything they showed was a port, was a remake, and I think there's a couple other ones that everyone was down on. Concord, to me, was not. They misfired with that big time. Not because it's not my genre, just I was happy that a bunch of other people felt like me, that they got hooped and thinking it was a single-player story game, and then when it transitioned to that, I was like, oh my goodness, because I hadn't looked in that. So I actually don't think they should have done it. I think they just should have went with Summer Games Fest and been like, hey, we're going to sit and wait, so then when you get that state of play, a showcase, whatever, and it comes in and it's hot all around, then good. But really, I just think it was a bad showing overall, and I think it just made people just kind of more disappointed with what's going on with PlayStation right now. And Xbox has enough disappointment to lay off, so it just feels like in general it's just like just kind of down, and people are really hoping, okay, Nintendo, let's see if we get something good. We talk about off air, even some Keely's like, well, just kind of an 8 out of 10 conference, which is cool, but still it's just like, so yeah, I don't think it was good showing. I think it was easily their worst one. I don't think it's bad per se, but I think just when it's that little of content you have to show, I think you just skip it and you sprinkle it elsewhere, and then you wait till you can have those big nachos out there,
Big nachos.
Yeah.
I think with PlayStation, like, they still have the different marketing, I guess, importance between like a state of play and their showcases. I think they just call them the showcases, right? And that's usually what they do in June. So I think it was purposeful that instead of doing the PlayStation showcase, which obviously wouldn't have made sense if they didn't have tons of first party things to show, I think it's notable that they did a state of play here instead of that showcase. And I didn't have a chance to watch this one live because I was out at a doctor's appointment when it was happening, and so I just saw the chat in the Discord and you and being very negative on it, and others like not.
Wasn't just me; everybody was. Sometimes, sometimes I feel like I'm a negative Nancy, but everyone felt like this was like a whiff,
Yeah, and I mean I don't. Like, I use Twitter just to promote my game. That's my sole use for it. So I don't see a lot of people's opinions on these things until like afterwards, and I'm listening to other podcasts and whatnot. And so I think going into watching it, I had a very low expectation, seeing this is garbage showcase, nothing here. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought this was a great showcase that had tons of cool games that I hadn't heard of before. So I feel like their announcements or just reminders, everything had good showings, like tons of gameplay for all these things. Concord took a while to get to the actual gameplay, but then they did show a lot of it. There was a couple of good surprises in there. And honestly, for the first time in a while, I was like, I wish I had a PS5 for a couple of these games. Like, usually I'm like, you know what, I'll wait until Wolverine, I'll wait until Death Stranding 2 at this point. But it's like, man, I really want Astrobot Day 1. And a couple of the other games I would really love to play as well, if they were maybe on like PlayStation Plus to some extent or whatnot. But I feel like they also had a really good mix of genres that they were hitting here. I mean, it's of course a lot of like third-person action games, but different like sub-genres within that to hit different audiences. So yeah, I guess I'm surprised to hear that that's kind of the general opinion from a lot of people, is that this was not a good showcase, because just looking at some of these games, Ballad of Antara was an interesting announcement, Infinity Nikki, that has an audience, new Dynasty Warriors game, Behemoth, Where Winds Meet, and then, we're going to get into all these, of course, but like that stuff as just like kind of interesting new different games I didn't know of before. Concord, they said they announced last year. I totally forgot that was a thing, but maybe they didn't show anything of it. So I thought that had a good showing. And then, like Astrobot just looks freaking amazing. Like, what if Nintendo was actually like a next gen or a current gen console? Like, this is what Mario would look like. So I just thought that looked like tons of fun. So yeah, I think this is a really, really great showcase, and it got me excited about PlayStation, which does not happen a whole lot in recent times for me.
I was looking because we usually do this live or closer to because you're asked about like the Twitter reaction. I was looking at Jeff Keighley's poll whenever he does those how would you grade
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and Z. So it was pretty much 1,015 or 115,000 votes,
Okay.
41% on the D or below, 33% on C, 19% on B, and then 5% on A. So I don't know also if it's just that I do legitimately think that Concord was a bad way to start. And I think that put a lot of bad people's taste because I felt like people were getting excited for like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is PlayStation's next big thing. And it's just it's not even that because I feel like even the people that like that genre is you really have to stand out now because it's there's so much of this type of game, right? So and
Yeah.
maybe it's also just I think it is a little bit for there's people like us and other people that and I think Twitter users as well, but tons of people that follow and know, okay, it's a bit more of a lighter year. If you don't know that and you're more than a semi-casual fan and you know E3 and know this, but you don't know, oh, hey, you're not getting some big exclusives for a while. Maybe they're thinking, oh, this could be that time. And not everybody knows the difference between a state of play and showcase because I
Mm-hmm.
know there's differences, but I always forget like which one is which. So I think it's just maybe that as well too. It's just they've been
Yeah.
quiet for a while, and maybe if there was this other if I wonder if there's one other big game along with Astro Bot, if that would have been like either a Death Stranding or a Metal Gear, which the rumor is it's delayed until next year because they kept kind of saying it's this year, and I don't think anyone bought that. But maybe if they had one more big one too, that could have helped. But I think those remakes really hurt it, like Until Dawn and Silent Hill. It's just I think especially when Silent Hill like people just think it generally doesn't look good, and that's not good when you have like Evil Dead or sorry, not Resident Evil that has just killed these remakes and really brought
Mm-hmm.
it back. Where I feel like you look at Silent Hill, it's just it's looking a little rough. So I think the amount of and like even though it's not a remake, just announcing a God of War port to PC, it's like that's good, but that's some again I like go put them the the PC gaming show. Like I don't think the core audience for PS5 or PlayStation care that God of War is going to PC because it's like I have it already. You know, like that's a different audience. That's where the gaming show would be perfect. That's the PC gaming audience,
Yeah, and
you know?
that either leaked or was already announced too, and this was just kind of the
Mm,
showing
yeah,
of it. So I can see why. I mean, I understand why they put it in something like this because they have to announce it, to
of course.
appease
Yeah.
shareholders, I'm sure, and things
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, it's got to be somewhere, I guess. But yeah, I'm curious because I don't know what Sony tweeted or what their blog post. I didn't see their blog post when they announced this state of play, and usually that's where they will say like, "Oh, there's no first party games going to be at this," or
Mm,
"Hey, this is like." A very big focus on like VR. Like they'll usually set the expectation a little bit. So I don't know what they said for this, but it's like I don't know if people know that okay, there's no PlayStation like first party games coming out this year, so we're not expecting first party studios to show up. Then it's like, what more could you ask for? Like these games look amazing. They showed a ton of gameplay, a different kind of genres. So I am surprised to see that reaction. But let's talk about the games. Let's talk about the specific things here. So first up was Concord.
mhm,
As you mentioned, this is a game that is pretty much an Overwatch like.
yeah.
With a very Guardians of the Galaxy type
Mhm,
of personality, character, charm, whatever you want to say to it. Yeah, started with like a really just high quality CGI cutscene introducing the characters and showing their kind of tomfoolery, setting up the kind of different factions, I suppose. And then eventually we do see the actual gameplay and see that it is Overwatch. Like they never say that. Instead, they actually said, "Oh, we were inspired by fighting games and strategy games," which I found interesting for the wording. Like
mm,
you don't have to hide that this is like an Overwatch. This is
yeah.
inspired by Overwatch or something. So I found that interesting. But yeah, other than the I guess element that you're was hoping this was maybe more of a single player thing. Like, what did you think of the actual gameplay that we saw for this? Is this something you would check it out if it's a free to play game on PS5?
No, just because it's not my genre. So for me, I have to go from what do people that like that type of genre think, and I just felt the reception was pretty lukewarm to it. But there wasn't anything because to me, if I was gonna play one of them, I'd be in dropping in Marvel Rivals. I'd maybe finally do Overwatch because okay, I've heard X, Y, and Z about it. But for me, it's just not a genre I'm really that interested in. And then this didn't get me aboard anymore. Be like, oh, this is really cool. This is really cool. So I don't know. It's tough. I guess what I can say from the outside point of view, it didn't look like it had anything that stood out. And I think that's kind of that's the tough thing. I didn't see, oh, I don't like
Mm-hmm.
this game, but it's doing this, so that's really cool. The things that they're doing are the things I agree with other people. They're like, you're gonna get weekly cutscenes and this and that. Where it's like,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
that's gonna cost so much money. We just everything we've talked about with these games that are doing these things that they do so much before being a big hit. It's like you should not be making a game that's dependent on this game has to be doing really, really well. Make that later on. So that's where it's like the things that I heard that's doing differently are things that I go, oh, that's not going to work. And again, I don't think that audience cares that much about. Like, is the Overwatch crowd, those type of shooters, are they needing like a weekly cutscene story-wise? Like, I feel like those are different people.
I mean,
you know?
so Overwatch, being a Blizzard game, like Blizzard goes all out with crazy CG cutscenes, and there are a lot of great ones in Overwatch, and I don't even know if they're just like on YouTube or on their website or if they're in game. I've seen a lot of them, but I can't even remember where I've seen them before. But it wouldn't be like this, where it's like, oh yeah, every week I'm gonna log in and it's Monday, cool, I get new cutscene today. Like, I don't think anyone has that perspective of it, but the Overwatch cutscenes and like character stuff that they have done, it's really freaking cool. And so I think it's interesting that they, as well as like kind of stealing that gameplay style and that format to take on the story element to it is an interesting idea. And like, if it works well, it actually could be interesting, but that's not really what grabbed me about this.
Yeah.
And I think you're right that is something that could be very expensive for them to keep producing that. Like, I'm sure they're going to have like the first few months kind of all in the bank before the game even launches. But then to keep making that stuff, it just seems like a bit of a money pit. So I don't know how long they're going to do that. Maybe they'll eventually kick it down to like a monthly character update, or whenever a new character comes into the game, they'll get a new cutscenes to them. Like, maybe that's the way to do it. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. And I guess for me, where I thought this looked fun and I'd like to play it is that, yeah, like Overwatch, I had a great time with it back in the day, but it's changed a lot. I don't really like where the game is at these days, and so I don't really have any interest in playing it anymore. But I still like that kind of gameplay, and it was really fun playing it with friends. I like Guardians of the Galaxy, so like have a game that's kind of like taking that. I thought the characters looked cool.
I got a game for you to finally try, Dylan.
Yeah, I like the voice acting. I like the character designs. I think they seem interesting and cool. And you got to come up with crazy, clever ideas for them. And I think they did a good job of that. And like one of them's like a huge robot, and they even showed like his perspective, and he was looking down at some character who's like looked tiny compared to him. Like, so he'll just be like this huge beast character that you can play. I think that seems really interesting. So, and then just the gameplay. Like, I thought the maps looked really, really great. Like, they looked really lived in and very cool alien settings. I thought the gameplay, like the animations, looked really, really solid of like reloading or dodging and all these kinds of things. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is a game that I could easily see failing just because there are so many competitors to it. Overwatch is still pretty big. Valorant is a big game. There's been tons of rumors recently of Valve is about to release a game very similar to this as well. That one's going to be maybe a bit more like Smite than Overwatch, but still like in that kind of thing. It's called Deadlock, and that game is going to be huge no matter what, at least for a while, because Valve and Steam are just so huge. Way bigger than this. So I think if Deadlock does come out soon, and this comes out beta in July, launch in August, if Deadlock comes out around it, I think that would be a really bad time for them, and that would be kind of unfortunate. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see what I would pick between the two, because I haven't actually seen Deadlock yet. There's no gameplay for it. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really hard one for it to take off and be huge. But honestly, what I saw was all good signs. Like the character arc things, like, hey, maybe it's not getting you in the door, but it's like, hey, if the gameplay's solid and that's just like a cherry on top, then some people are going to be into that. So I would like to play it. Do you think this game's going to be free to play with microtransactions, or is it going to be a full price game? Because Overwatch is now free. Valorant, I believe, is also free to play.
Yeah, I'll say I think you kind of have to be, or kind of DOA, unfortunately. So
yeah, I think so too. So whenever I do get a PS5, I will definitely jump in and check it out. But it's not quite a console seller. But I don't know. I would be happy to play this. So I'm curious to hear people's opinions on it when it comes out in beta.
I was gonna say, have they not brought that Guardians game to Game Pass yet? Has that not been?
It was, and then it left.
Oh, okay, dang.
I was thinking about it like kind of before I saw that. Oh, it's gonna be gone in a few weeks, and I thought about booting it up, and I guess I forget what came out that month, but I was busy playing something else, unfortunately. So
one day
I'll get to it.
Thoughts on that? Yeah, one day. Yeah.
Okay, after that was the God of War Ragnarok thing coming to PC. Cool, we know about that.
Good for them.
And then Dynasty Warriors Origins, which is I very much associate as like a PlayStation series. These have been all I remember going over to my friend's house as a little kid and playing Dynasty Warriors, and we're just watching him play, and it was just like the craziest game. I'd never seen so many enemies on screen at the same time. And then honestly, anytime I've tried to play these games, I just hate the gameplay. It is not for me. I picked up Hyrule Warriors and then Age of Calamity as well, the other Zelda one, and I just can't get into it. So it's not for me. But honestly, seeing this on the PS5, where it's like, wow, they can render even more enemies than they could before, and like the frame rate actually looks good. It looked pretty insane, and I know there's an audience for this kind of thing. Have you ever played a Dynasty Warriors game before, Travis?
I think I'm in the same camp as you, where I feel like I have a friend named Jeff that was really into like this and like Ninja Gaiden.
Right.
And I feel like it's one of those where it's like you're over at the friend's place and you're playing and like you're having a good enough time. It's just like, oh, I only play this at his house. You know, like it's not anything I own. But I recall like your story sounds similar to mine, and even just seeing him on this, because I'm getting a refresher. He's riding the horse at one point and he's hitting enemies. There's a bunch of red around him. Like that, like anime type feels like very familiar to this. So yeah, like I'd like to maybe get it in my hands again, but nothing that I'm reaching out to. But hey, I don't mind. I want a game like this, but I want a Lord of the Rings version. What I want that would get me in, because I used to love. We've talked about this before, doing the waves.
Yeah, it does look a lot like Conquest in terms of the gameplay of it, I would say.
But on the PS2 games, when you could do Lord of the Rings: Two Towers or Return of the King, and you just do the waves of enemies, I'd love just be Aragorn fighting.
Yeah, I'm almost surprised they haven't, because they've done a lot of crossovers now. I mentioned the Zelda one. They had one for, I think even two of them for Fire Emblem now. I mean, those obviously are more like Nintendo-y things, but yeah, I wonder if there's other crossover ones out there that they've done.
Yeah, just gotta talk to Embracer Group, with those Lord of the Rings video games coming up,
yes,
right?
True.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Also, random thought, but with Embracer Group being now the owner of the Lord of the Rings IP and probably just selling it out to everyone to make any penny they can, why is Lord of the Rings not come to multiverses now that Embracer Group is like?
I really don't know.
Owning that IP.
It's really frustrating. Like I don't even understand, how do we get a thumbnail having Aragorn and Gandalf somewhere and then they've never been in, and it still doesn't happen. Maybe my like hope is that they're like holding it for like the Battle of Rohirrim and they're gonna like time it. Like that's my hope.
Spend so much money on that.
Yeah, my hope is that they're being smart, but I don't think that's the case. I think there's just something funky going on with it. So
yeah.
Next
up was a game called Infinity Nikki, which, not a mere Travis game by any means.
No.
It looked, I don't even know what the game, like some of the gameplay looked kind of like Souls-like type of combat, and then like maybe open world exploration. This is a weeb game, like through and through. So it's not for me or Travis necessarily. I think the visuals look great, and I think it's just cool to see a game like this that looked like so high budget, because I feel like normally games like this are like smaller budget things or look like AA kind of things, but like this looks like a AAA ass game. So I know there's gonna be a big audience for this, and I'm happy for them. This game exists. I don't know anything about the developer or this character, if these characters come from elsewhere, but yeah.
This is I think you can track it in the Discord. This is where I knew we were in trouble, because we had Discord. Or we had Concord, we had the God of War port, we had Dynasty, and then we had this, and I was like, oh man, we're in for. I was like, I don't think it's gonna go the way I want it to, and it didn't. So, but I'm happy for the weaves out there. So,
and then Ballad of Antara, which is coming out next year. This very much looked like Elden Ring, like a Souls-like type of game. Like another kind of very Japanese sort of themed here. My question about this was, we saw kind of multiple shots of like different characters doing combat. They looked very distinct, and I don't know, like, do you think those are just like different classes and stuff, or is this a game where you're like actually switching between characters for like different points in the story? Like, it doesn't look like you have a party necessarily, but like very distinct different types of characters. But it seemed more than just like them showing like different builds that you can do in this game.
Yeah, it's weird because like even I'm looking at like the title screen, it's like the guy and he has the little girl in the back and it goes into him.
That seems like a protagonist, but then there's other playable characters clearly.
I could say maybe there's some multi-characters going on, because I just feel like if you could do a different build of a character, let's just say it's some guy named Steve and there's these 4 models, I don't think you'd show that in this trailer per se, or you'd show less about a main character. So I feel like it's him, and maybe these characters are flashes forward, back to other things. So,
and I'm so curious now that you've jumped in and you love Elden Ring, like where's the interest level on this one?
No, not there.
No
Not there.
interest?
I still, my interest is, DLC coming up, completing that, and then is maybe going to try some of the older games. I think,
Like Dark Souls?
yeah, until I
Okay.
see, or even Bloodborne, I think that's the other one that
Yeah.
I always hear about. Like, until I see another one where Elden Ring, again, I had no intention until that world just grabbed me. Until I see one in this world, it looked good enough, but I think it's more still kind of like, feels like it's bordering a bit on the anime type of side, and it's never, never in my expertise per se. So I think I'm more still inclined to go back to a couple. Or what's that other one? It's not completely Souls-like, but it's like Sekiro or something like that. Is there like a
That's
ninja?
also from Software, yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah, it's
another
ninja
one.
themed.
Yeah. So I think there's a few other ones in the past that when I'm ready after Elden Ring
Mhm.
to dive into something else very challenging, it'd be one of the older ones.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we got 2 VR games, which is something I've been curious to see. Like, okay, what is PlayStation gonna do with VR? Because I feel like they had
What are they
PSVR,
gonna do?
they had PSVR 2 come out last year,
Yeah.
and then like there hasn't been a ton of releases. But I thought this one, Behemoth, that they showed off here looked great. Like if I was to get a VR and play a game, like this is what it would be, because it just looks like Skyrim, which I know you can play in VR as well, but
Yeah.
it looks very Skyrim-like in terms of the visuals, but all the combat in it and like the grappling hook where you're using like do puzzles and like, throw your weapon across the room and then like grab it with a grappling hook or throw enemies around, kicking guys into spikes like Dark Messiah. It was like very much inspiring, or looked a lot like that game, one of my favorites from Arcane there. So yeah, I thought this just looked like a ton of fun. I love the vibe of this one. If I had VR, this would be a day one for me. But I don't have VR. I don't even have a PS5, so it's a little expensive for me to go pick this one up.
No, I agree. Because most of VR games they usually tune out. I still think we'll talk about, because you said they only showed 2. I still think that's a clear sign of this thing's just not where they want to be, or if they're just not putting the they're not putting the finances, the promotion, everything that needs to go. It just feels like it's just even more so. Like VR1 feel like it came out big push and then they kind of leaned off. This has not been out that long and it already feels like it's kind of like, it's kind of around. But no, this looked really cool. It reminded me of like a way higher budget to like some of the games you'd see in an arcade, which is like, I'm saying that in like a positive way. So yeah, no, I liked it, but same thing. I'm never gonna own PSVR 2 unless I like win at like a Christmas raffle or something. So that's not my bag. But I agree with you. This looked one of the better ones where some of the VR games look pretty rough or just kind of forgettable. So
Yeah, this is the first one that I've seen where I'm like, wow, visually that game is like standing up with other AAA games, which is rare. The one that did not, though, is Alien Rogue Incursion coming out this holiday. And yeah, we didn't, like, there wasn't a whole lot shown here, and I don't know why. If the game's coming out later this year, I feel like they could have had a larger bout of gameplay. I mean, it looks like Alien Isolation or something, but just in VR, which is really all you need to say.
Yeah.
But I just feel like visually it was a bit lackluster. Something about it seemed a little off to me, but it's cool that it's happening, I guess. It's a nice, it makes sense for that to be a VR game.
Yeah, visually, I think you're right. This feels almost more like the PSVR 1 era, like kind of a couple years back there. And again, I could say this kind of feels like arcade, but now this in the bad way, where it's like you'd get to those games, like, this looks a little less for them, but it's a smart game. I think as long to me, if they could reach even like a Metacritic like 65 out of 100, like that's fine. Like that's what you're looking for, I think, with the Alien game. And I think people already talk about Alien Isolation being a very scary kind of intense, uncut gems, anxiety-driven sort of feeling. So if they can capture that and then get in VR, I think you're winning, and obviously good timing. They're about to do a bunch of promotion for the movies and stuff. So
Yep. They confirmed that Marvel Rivals is coming to PS5. Not a huge shock.
I didn't know it wasn't. I thought that was just
I think it was already mentioned, or once again, could have been a leak.
So like in public, was it just PC? Is that what the word was at some point, or
for the
what was
beta,
it?
you mean?
It was in general the whole game.
I don't recall. Yeah, it was probably just announced for PC. I don't even know if that initial trailer had consoles tied to it.
Okay.
Maybe it even had PS5.
Yeah, I must have missed that because I didn't even know. I thought it was just I was already going to consoles other than Switch. So
yeah, I would assume so too.
And is there a reason why it'd be going to PlayStation and not Xbox, or do you think Xbox is just coming?
It's probably
down the
also
line?
coming to Xbox as well. I'd imagine if they're working on one at a time, PS5 would make more sense for the player base. But I'm sure it'll come to Xbox down the line as well. Probably see that at the Xbox showcase in a few days.
Big news.
Yeah. I don't not much to say about this trailer other than it was fun to see more team ups like Scarlet Witch and Magneto have one, which is cool, of course. And then seeing other characters, it seems like there are triple team attacks with certain character trios. So that I don't think we've seen that before. That was pretty sweet. And then I think the highlight for me was at one point they were crumbling some buildings, and they like knocked the foundation out of one and it was about to fall over, but then there was like spider web attached to the roof, so the roof stayed in place while the rest of the building crumbled out. And it's like that's the kind of thing that gets me really excited about this game, and just see like what kind of crazy tactics can you do by just blasting certain walls, bridges, roofs down, and like using these spider characters, of which there's a few, to like keep some of these things intact and make platforms that are beneficial to your team. Like that seems really freaking cool. So I thought that was really impressive, and I'm really excited to play this game. It was unfortunately too powerful for my laptop or PC. I did apply for that beta, and I did get that invite, but then I just couldn't play it. So when it comes to a console that I have, I will definitely be jumping in and share my thoughts on it. But any thoughts from you on this one?
This is still, again, not my genre. Jury's out. I think I said I would try it. I don't know. July, we'll see. Like I might give it a go. I just still feel I haven't felt the pull to this game yet. I think some of the character designs are very cool, and I think I've seen some of the beta stuff. There's been some really cool things. Like I saw this attack that Doctor Strange does where he can put a portal and make people jump through it and they go on the other side, so he just made the portal be off the map, so it's just a bunch of people try and jump. Cool. So I'm like, oh, that's very clever, very fun. So yeah, I think there's some very cool stuff. So maybe it'll be a game that'll surprise me and I'll boot up, because I think I'll try it at least once, but it's still nothing that it's not the Marvel game I'm asking for. But if other people are, great. But again, lots of those type of games out there, right? And we've seen that comic book games aren't like a guaranteed to get a download player base. Just because it's a big franchise doesn't mean they're going to cross over. So.
And then next up, Where Winds Meet. This is another Souls-like game, very kind of traditional Japanese style, a little more anime influence. Once again, I think it looks great. Not really my cup of tea necessarily, but I thought it looked really solid. Like the one fish boss that you were fighting against looked pretty cool, so I was into that. I'll skip through these next ones. Until Dawn remake was in there. Path of Exile 2, Silent Hill remake. I saw it again. I actually thought it looked better here than previous showing, but still, I'm on the edge with it. It seems like maybe more combat focused than I am into for these kinds of games. And then Monster Hunter Wilds, which we I'm trying to remember where that was announced. It was announced earlier this year, I want to say. It could have been even been last year at this point. But seeing more of this game, I thought it looked really great in terms of like the visuals and the combat of it. Someday I think I'll get into a Monster Hunter game and it'll be my favorite thing ever. But in the demos or a little bit I have played, it's like it's just a little slow, a little sluggish. It takes too long. Like these enemies are obviously like bullet sponges and whatnot, so it just takes a bit too long. But I thought like the enemy design here and like the physics of the monsters. One guy had like his huge tongue that he's slopping around the screen that I thought looked like a really fun attack. The sandstorm at one point, that really looked cool. Really, really great. So I just think visually this game looks great, other than the fact that it looked like maybe 30 FPS, which I hope it's not. I hope it is at 60. It could have been just YouTube, of course. But yeah, I think like the story looks super cheesy, which kind of surprised me. I thought these games were more serious, so maybe they're just switching it up, or maybe I just don't know what the heck I'm talking about. But once again, I think this game looks great. It's just, I don't know. I find Monster Hunter to be a really overwhelming series for some reason.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure when I'm going to pop my chair in that one day. I've never booted one up or played one or anything, so I'm not sure. But I think the audience was happy enough with this. There's some things about it, like you said, that look like they could be fun, but I guess it's just, I don't know why. I don't know why I haven't jumped in. I think maybe because there's similar things in other games that I'm like, oh, I'm already kind of playing that. But I'd like to, at least just to say that I've done it. So, but I don't think it'll be this one. So,
yeah. Next up is Astro Bot. So this is coming out September 6th this year. So pretty short time between announcement, and I don't even think this has been leaked. I haven't heard anything about this.
There were some rumors about it going in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed those then. Does this? Because I don't have a PS5, so I haven't played Astro's Playroom. Does this look like an exact sequel to that? Obviously, it's Astrobot, so it's a continuation. But in terms of like the gameplay, would you say this is pretty similar to what Playroom looks like?
Maybe.
You never played Playroom? I thought you played it because you've talked about like the controller shit and how cool that is.
Maybe I played like a
feeling
level or
the
two.
rain on your hands and whatnot.
Maybe I played like a level or two, and then I was I moved on. So, but from what I gather,
isn't that game like 3 hours long or something?
from what I gather, it does. I think they've captured the spirit pretty well. But I got stuff to do. There's other game. I have a backlog of games, and it's like
3 hours to beat.
yeah, no, I'll play Hellblade twice.
3 hours.
You know, that's what I'll do. But yeah,
God
no,
damn.
never spent too much time with Astro Boy or Astro Bot. But from what I hear, to me, I think people are pretty happy with it, like looking at like the equivalent of it. So
Yeah, no, I mean this looked like Mario Odyssey to me, but with Astrobot instead, and better looking graphics and like a nice frame rate and
some
all
very
this.
bright colors too. Just like not saying
Yeah.
that Mario doesn't, but I think they're just going with a very different. Like it just feels
Well,
like
even
there's
the character
areas.
designs looked like Mario characters in like an alternate universe or something.
Yes, yeah, it's just like a good aesthetic, and that's what I'm enjoying about it. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I think this hit a home run because I think it was because I think there were some stats like one of those like YouTube trailers for a video game or something like that, and I am surprised. So I'm curious in two ways. Where with September, I don't think I'm gonna get that because this is one that I think I'll wait, and I have to see because I'm very curious what they're gonna price it as because I think if this is a $70 game, I think I don't know if that's gonna perform well in that state. So
I could seeing it be a bit lower potentially
Yeah.
if they're going after the younger audience too. So maybe they want to price it somewhere where
Mac
like
style.
a kid could buy it with their birthday
Yeah.
money, instead of
Just the dev, one of them, there was some interview going around that they made like this is a big game, not in the big way of like an Elden Ring, but you know what I mean, like to this.
yeah, it's
size.
not like
So,
Playroom. It's like it's a full game. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something where I'll wait and see, but this could be tons of fun, especially now as like the girls are starting to experiment and do different games and everything like that. So we haven't got Pete Showtime because we're waiting for Logan to be a little older, so then they can both kind of do single player stuff. But this is one that I'll probably have my eyes on in the future and see what it could do. So no, I think this is a great showing for a platform, which platformers are. Unless you're Nintendo, it's like the forgotten art of the video game. I think people are just almost like, oh yeah, it's like black and white movies. Like it had its time. And then if Martin Scorsese directs a movie, it's like nothing does black and white movies. Like, oh yeah, classic director, and that's where Nintendo is, right? It's like, oh yeah, platformer. But anybody else doing them, I just feel like it's like, oh well, it's not Nintendo.
It's
so
a
like,
space for indie games these days, which
Yes.
indie games are crushing it.
100%.
Some of my favorite platformers ever recently are made by these small indie teams. But
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, to clarify, I don't mean the quality of them. Not like there's tons out there that are great that I've played, or people that have played I haven't just say great things about them. It's just in the eyes of the public, those aren't like system movers or system sellers or moving shipments, right? So that's unless again you're Nintendo, and that's just like it's kind of a cheat because it's Nintendo, but they're also banking off IP that's been popular for what 50 60 40 years or whatnot. So it's like name me a Nintendo platform that's come out that's an entirely new character that's done those numbers. They wouldn't do the same thing either, right? I'm still waiting on a new Banjo-Kazooie game or something, but I digress. It's not coming out. So
yeah, Xbox should do that. They own that stuff. They own
should.
Spyro and Bend and Crash now too, so they should do like a trio game where all three of them team up.
almost like they could do like some sort of fighting game too with all these
almost,
characters. Yeah.
almost.
Man,
Maybe me
Spyro.
and Taylor to theoretical cast based on
Yeah.
this very topic.
It's like maybe you should just do that. But no, I think this was great. So I'm curious in two ways where I think it's going to review well. I got good vibes about this. Felt like everyone was happy. So that was really cool to see. So yeah, I'm going to be curious to see what they price wise, and then I'm going to be curious to see what it does. Hopefully it reviews well and can kind of get some momentum because it could also be maybe like good like Christmas purchases too for families of like, here's something to, give a kid for Christmas and it's a fun, safe game. So no, I think this was really good. And I think them giving it the highlight spot shows that they are caring about it. And I think I'm happy they ended on this instead of Concord because I think there is a multiverse where they end on Concord thinking it's the bigger deal. And I think this was smarter to do. So
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that's very much needed. Like I remember growing up and thinking that the PlayStation 1 and 2 were, oh yeah, there's tons of kid. I mean, I didn't think about it at the time, but like
Yes.
these are very kid friendly games. A lot of platformers, a lot of mascots, and there was lots of intrigue. But I feel like these days, PS4 and PS5, like these Sony first party games aren't really appealing to that market, other than like maybe Ratchet and Clank. But I even think that is maybe for like maybe aimed at more like teenagers or something as the primary demographic. So I think it's really important for their portfolio to have something like this. And I think Astrobot's such a cool, fun character. And obviously I remember this was in Playroom as well, but like Nathan Drake and Parappa the Rappa and like Journey, Kratos, Aloy, all these characters having like their funny little versions in here is really cool. So it's kind of the crossover IP too. I love the controller glider and the
that's
PS5 ship. Like
Yeah.
that is just so fun. I think it's like the perfect amount of like, I don't know, just like selling your it's like product placement for your own product, you know?
Yeah.
So like,
It's very
but
like
it's like the
Wreck-It
perfect
Ralph
amount.
sort of way where they use like Disney IP in certain ways to like wink and nudge at you. So it's like, oh, like it's a movie still, but like you still get to see some stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like a cool, like just wink of the eye, tongue in cheek way. So I'm with you though. Like just even the designs of them, I actually really like them because like we talked about, I think when it came out, like the PS5 does have like a weird like future techie type of feel. So it kind of fits perfect with Astro.
Making
so.
fun of itself a little bit, like trying to be a
Yeah.
bit more lighthearted, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then yeah, the music was just amazing in this trailer as well. So I am mad that I won't be playing this game at release. Like this game looks fantastic. I can't wait to play it sometime down the line.
Yeah.
That does it for the state of play. Any final thoughts here? Do you want to throw a number on it? What do you want to do? Any
Yeah, if I
closing
would have
thoughts?
thrown it like in the olden days that we used to do the conferences like the 1 to 5, I would put this at a 2. I'd still fail it because I still think there was too
Did
much.
we allow semi like 0.5s when we did those? I forget.
I think
Probably
we did
because we don't really take it that seriously. Anyway.
Yeah, we don't take it that seriously. But even if
I'm
we
gonna go
did,
to 3.75 for
okay,
myself.
okay, yeah. Even if we did, I'm still feeling it. But some good stuff in there.
Mm-hmm. One other PlayStation thing I wanted to ask you about. I don't know if you saw this rumor from a couple weeks ago that there's apparently a Horizon Lego game in
Yes.
development, which it really stood out to me. I was like, that is a weird pick. But at the same time, I think it could actually work really well in terms of like the creatures and like that just feels like Legos already, where you're breaking like pieces and parts off of each other. But I also think of Lego games as like you need a lot of characters for these games. You don't always, right? Because like Indiana Jones has a Lego game, and I don't know, there's like 5 characters across those movies. So I don't know. It seems like a weird IP, but at the same time, I think it could work. I don't know. Do you hope that actually is real, or do you not care? Where you're at with that?
I'm with you where I think that's super weird. At first, when I heard it, I thought it was like, oh, like a Lego set. Yeah, that makes sense. That'd be cool. And like to a game, I just don't know if the Horizon moves a lot of units. I think the second game moved a lot of units, and it does really well. But I still, to me, the Lego games are kind of the Lego based on something games. I guess they don't even do regular games because remember there used to be like a Lego Racer and oh man, Lego Soccer. I loved Lego Soccer, man.
Yeah, they
That
did
was-
Lego City Undercover. I think. was
Oh
one of them.
yeah, that was such good stuff. So now they don't really do it, but to me, it still was like Star Wars, Avengers, Batman, Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings, Pirates. Like it was these type of adaptation games were for the mega of IP, right? And I don't consider Horizon the mega of IP overall. If you want to talk about PlayStation, sure, you can argue that Aloy is this new icon and those games are really well, and it is a new franchise. So yes, but is it enough that enough people are wanting or going to buy that? It sounds really weird. And I believe it because I think the sources were pretty good. So it's an odd one. And it's even odd too that they're not even doing it that maybe after the third game when you could do like all 3 games. But like I don't know if it's a remake. I don't know if it's like the movies replay over. I don't know if it's something entirely.
I don't see Horizon Lego getting a sequel at some point. Like I feel like it's a one-off, right?
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think there's tons of things you can actually do with it. It's just to me a very odd pick of how did these conversations start? Like did PlayStation go to Lego, vice versa? Like I have more business sides that I'm excited to read like a report on one day of like how did this happen? And same thing, how does this sell? Is this something that people see as go, oh, Horizon Lego? Like I don't think so. Like I feel like not that it's even a mega one, but I feel like the one to do that would have been like God of War, where you can like, okay, that's where you can have some fun. And like you think of Lord of the Rings and those games where there's serious dramatic moments, but with the Lego characters, like think about Kratos and some of those really comedic stuff where not saying Horizon is like a funny game, but it still has lighthearted. It's more lighthearted than the God of War games, I'd say at times in some characters. So yeah, it's a weird fit, but they are going in. Because there's the remake, there's the Lego game, there's the 3, and then there's that multiplayer game.
I forgot about the remake.
Yeah, the remake, and there's the multiplayer game, which that one I want to buy. I don't know if you're in it because
I feel like I did not know about that. Tell me about the multiplayer game.
I think it's supposed to be like almost like a Monster Hunter type of game where it's it'd be something I think akin to like the Ghost of Tsushima one where it's like you, me, drop or go somewhere and we're taking down dinos, and that's where I think like obviously story and has some problems, but I think like that's one I'd love to play, whether it's with you or somebody, because I feel like just like Ghost of Tsushima, where it's a solo game, the second we did Legends, we're like, oh, this is tons of fun. Like, I think there's tons of fun to, oh, there's a massive, huge T-Rex that you and me got to take down. I think I think there's some really fun multiplayer potential there. So with 3, even though I did think about the other day and we had that experience with 2, I still was like, when 3 comes out, I might be back on the horse because I thought about how much I loved that first game. Like, you never know, and I think that's a good thing with a lot of time in between. You do start to go like, oh, maybe I could finish out the trilogy, but that one's iffy. The multiplayer game, if I had someone to play it with, because I don't want to play with randos, that is like a day one. Like, I think that could be tons of fun. But clearly PlayStation very values that franchise, and it's cool to see a newer one take off like this. So
yeah, I agree. I like that they're putting the resources into it. And obviously Aloy, making an appearance in Astro Boy as well. I know you got me saying Astro Boy. Damn it, Astro Bot as well. So that's cool. No, the multiplayer game sounds cool. I'm into that idea. I don't think I will pick up the third game, but I would definitely consider picking up the multiplayer game. I hope it wouldn't be a situation where it's like Legends that you need to own Ghost of Tsushima and then it's like a free download from that. Like hopefully it wouldn't be like, okay, Horizon 3 comes out and then this is like a free DLC. Hopefully they would just put it on its own thing.
Didn't they make Legends purchasable eventually at some point, or was I wrong about that? I thought there was a time where you could buy it by itself.
I thought you had to own Ghost of Tsushima to play it, but I could be wrong.
Maybe you just got.
I'm just thinking, well, because here's why I think that is the case is because I think when they just put Ghost of Tsushima on PC, and I don't think there's a separate SKU for Legends. Like I think it's just Ghost of Tsushima. Okay. Once again, I could be wrong about that, but
no, that's fine. But yeah, I guess it because what in your if it's not tied to Horizon 3, how would it be then? Do you think it'd be a separate $80 game? Because at that point, wouldn't you rather just be tied to Horizon 3? Because it's like, well, then I got Horizon 3 and the multiplayer mode. Because if you wanted to at least put your toes in the game, it's like that'd be better.
Yeah, you're right. That is a tricky part about it. I guess we just haven't seen a ton of these other like PlayStation multiplayer or these live servicey things yet, from this new kind of regime.
The Last of Us. Oh, right. Never mind.
Yeah, so I don't know what they would do for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they'd want to like discount it either. I think they would either want like a full price thing. I guess they'd really just have to sell it as like it is a big game all on its own. But I feel like it would make more sense to actually tie it to 3, unfortunately. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there.
Maybe we'll be on. But I feel like the ways this has been reported, it sounds like a separate game. So who knows? Okay. Maybe it's even something they could do like we always talk about it, but we'll see with this. And like Hellblade we're going to talk about later, that's very different. But that's like a $50 game, right? Maybe there's like a price they play with. I don't know,
Yeah, I don't think PlayStation's done that yet that I can think of with their first party stuff. Other than maybe VR titles. And I'm guessing Horizon Call of the Wild is like a very cheap game relative to, a regular AAA game, which might just be a playtime thing that they're factoring in there. But I don't know. I guess there is precedent for it to some extent. So I think that would maybe be the way to do it. Half price game in that realm. Mm-hmm.
Are you done with PlayStation stuff?
Yes, I am.
I got one bit of news I wanted to bring up because that's why you gotta be on our Discord. He shared it and it's very interesting. So it's video game related, but it's TV show related as well. That Prime Video just announced that there is a Like a Dragon Yakuza show coming out in October to Prime Video live action. It's gonna be a 6-episode thing. So another video game adaptation, and this one is like everyone's popping off because there was no rumors of this whatsoever. So I don't know. It's funny that I feel like months ago I've downloaded an Xbox. We were talking about Yakuza, and that's still one that I want to dip my toes in. So I've had to download the newest, not the newest one, but the one right before that. I have it download off Games Pass.
Yakuza so Like a Dragon.
Yeah. So at some point I'm gonna, but so keep your eyes open. I don't know if we'll be reviewing that, maybe like a mini one, but still that's fun to see. And I don't think Prime, other than Fallout, now they've got 2 like video games one, and not that I think Like a Dragon's on that size, but still like a bigger one.
I think that one that one could be a lot lower budget, which is helpful for them. And to me, that seems like a perfect pairing. I think a TV show is a better call for Yakuza. Those are usually pretty long games, I think. So if you want to access that much character stuff, I think the TV show route is the way to go.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of the series because I haven't played any, so I want to get into it. But I hope they keep. I wonder if they're going to play it straight, or there's going to be a lot of that because there's a lot of weird, wild stuff that happens in those games.
Right.
That's what made me want to play the game. I saw like a cutscene from the newest one. I'm like, okay, what is this game? And I got to play it. So I'm curious if you can do that. That's a hard tone to balance. But yeah, no, it's cool. Another video game adaptation coming out soon. So
I don't know if the games have English voice acting or not. So I wonder what the show will be like in that way.
Yeah, it doesn't say it. Just the title. Make your choice. Take the next step. Yakuza Like a Dragon comes to Prime October 24th. So
Right.
nothing. I don't think a synopsis or anything yet. But again, it sounds like this wasn't something that's been known, and the fact that it's already dropping this fall is pretty cool. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
stay tuned.
Very nice. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, we will be talking about Hellblade. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Travis, last week, or what was it, 2 weeks ago, we
2 weeks
did
ago,
a
yeah.
retrospective of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. And here we are, just a couple weeks later. The sequel is out, and we
Mm-hmm.
have played it, and we have finished it. You finished
Yep.
it, I
I
assume?
have. Yep.
Travis, what did you think of the sequel here?
So I think my thoughts are almost identical to the first one, but just lesser than. Like that's the way I would
Okay.
promote the whole game. Where I think that you have to know, and especially if you're playing the sequel, like I think there's probably a few people that it's funny. There's probably a few people that dropped off because they played that first one, and I think it is veering more on that experience video game than it is a video game. Like we talked about 2 weeks ago, I feel this is what maybe Kojima wants to with OD, or this is what he looks like. Oh, it's this cool hybrid of video game and movie, and this does feel like that. Even at times, there's some things that they've taken out from the first game that have eliminated that, and then there's some things that they've added where it is the classic. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's like, okay, am I in a cutscene or am I not? You know, am I playing or not? There's multiple times, like for example, this happens throughout the game a few times where your character will be laying down and maybe they're squished in between something, you have to crawl. For a while, she was crawling and then she just stopped. Like, what's going on? Like, oh, that's me. And this, even the way you move, it feels very close to kind of something that people have joked about. Oh, imagine one day if we can play a video game that looks like a cutscene. That's one thing. I think we talked about it a lot in the first one, but I don't think it's hyperbolic for me. Like I would put this in like a top 10 best looking video games all time
Yeah, me
visually.
too. Yep.
Holy
Those rocks,
moly!
baby. Oh, they look so good.
The rocks, the dirt, the visuals, everything. Just some of the water, some of the northern lights happen, the caves. Like, just it is breathtaking. Just I've never seen anything really like this. I'd have to make a list and see. And of course, they can do that shorter experience, not as much moving around. We talked about the combat before, so that's where for me it's still an achievement, even for me overall. If it's like a little lesser than one, because I feel like it's kind of what we talked about, where we go, what do you do with this? And I feel like there is kind of a sense of like, what do we do? And it feels like this is the best of it, but I don't know what you could have done if you make an even smaller experience of like a DLC. But at the same point, it's like I don't want to be like, oh, well, this was a complete failure, or like I didn't need it. I don't think it's some games where it's like, oh, you did number two, they didn't do anything new, or it's disappointing, and it's kind of fine. The same thing Horizon that we talked about, right? Where I don't think it's that, but it's a game that I don't think about Horizon 2 that much, right? Where this, even far out, I'll be thinking about this game for a while just because of those visuals. So visually, graphics, what you're looking at, it is a stunning game that I recommend. Even if you don't want to play it, go find a best of or a YouTube video, like watch some of this. But I still even recommend playing it because it is like 7 hours, unless you really don't like the whole video games as art experience thing. But yeah, so for my cons, where I talked about my biggest con, the last one was combat. That's kind of the same here. You know, it's still very much the same. I will completely admit that I think it is something where I'm playing one and then 2 weeks later or less than playing two and back to back. So even though if you put that together,
Yeah,
it's like a
sure.
14-hour game, it's still just like it's a 14-hour game that doesn't have much variety in fighting. And I actually think that maybe last game I said you could have done with less of the puzzles. I think you could have done less combat here as far as just interactions. I feel there's maybe like three big sections where there's like a boss or some big fight. I feel like you could just do that and then maybe two other more, like one to teach you a bit and then one sprinkled. Like I think less combat would actually be better here because I feel like they're definitely going for the experience and that's what people want. And I feel like they're trying their best. Like they're very caught in between. We still got to make this a video game, and I think it should be something almost more like a Gone Home, where it is more about the story and the visuals, and you're kind of playing a walking sim. Because I think at times the combat, I'm just kind of over it. I'm just it's not, it doesn't excite me. And I even looked into, because I had read some reviews and stuff, that there's even some stuff with the pairing that on purpose, that even if you do perfect parry, they'll make it that it doesn't. So they're trying to make the fights like more like cinematic and like,
I
and I
remember
don't,
I remember it like when they talked about it this back in the January direct that they
yeah,
wanted every fight to feel like you were just barely scraping by.
don't like that.
Yeah,
'Cause
so artificially kind of altering the
yeah,
difficulty to give you that intended feeling.
I like that for certain fights. Like we talked about, there's certain fight in the last game where it's like you're supposed to lose or not do well. I love that in video games when you're getting tricked. You go, okay, but when it's just like a little random battle with like one guy, it's like I just don't feel like I'm progressing there. The puzzles, they're pretty much the exact same. I feel like they did less of them and they made them even easier though. Like there's sometimes
Hmm.
where you definitely would have, oh, look at these three poles and put them together. But I had so many times where we're just looking, oh, that symbol's right on the wall. That symbol's just a stick of like, it's an N, you're looking for an N, oh, it's right there. And I feel like they were really guiding you to the point where it's tough because for me, it's never that I think I like the puzzles more than you, but I just thought it was a variety or also just doing them too much of the same one. We talked about that fire one, right? Like where I think they did pull those back, but at the same time, I feel like they almost like overcorrected, like they dumbed them down in a sense to make it like you don't really need to do them. So, and story wise, my last point before I give it to you, I think it's a good story, but I don't think for me it hits the same chords as the first one. I think even the element of like what's real, what's not, I think there's more elements that you can argue this being real, and I think that there's two examples I have, which we'll get into, that I think they could be in this person's mind suffering from psychosis. But for me, it just wasn't as intriguing, and I think it did show that that Hellblade one from a story point of view, I think was better as just a one-off. I don't think this added too much more. I think by the time, I think it kind of padded what you learned before. Even there's just times of her talking about getting over, some things, darkness and stuff. It's like I felt like we kind of went the full circle the first time, and this is, maybe an impact on how mental health will not just hurt you but others and what you can do with that. So I think there's still good messages in there. I just was not as enthralled with this story as the first one, and like I said, I'm not sure if there's like a way they could have done this as like a DLC. Maybe there's a version that they should have done Hellblade but not Senua and like a different character in this type of world, because I still want this game to exist, because just do something in this world, because the visuals are at least worth it. It is a gorgeous game. So again, not a bad story, but I think everything is kind of lesser than as the first one. So that's kind of where I am with Hellblade 2, where I enjoyed it, but still not the first one, other than, like I said, just being in awe of what's on screen in front of me. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Where do I want to go first?
uh-oh.
I had a very mixed time with this game across the board. In many ways, it improved on the thing I hated the most about the first game, the puzzles. I hate those puzzles, and they pad the game. They make it way longer. That game should be 2 hours shorter than it needs to. And I think that they fixed that here. The puzzles, there's way, way less of them. You're not doing the same things over and over again. They do a good job of actually like layering the puzzles that you're doing. So it's like, okay, here's one puzzle mechanic. Half an hour later, you're doing some other type of puzzle mechanic, and then there's like another point later on that you're kind of fusing those two things together. It was never too hard. I was never stumped for too long, other than like maybe a couple puzzles, and that was like the perfect amount for me, so it didn't drag the game down. And I think because of that, this game is a lot shorter than the first one. At least it felt like it to me, but that was like positive. That was good for me for this kind of game. I don't need it to be too long. And in the first game, I loved the combat, and here I love it too. I think it's great. It does exactly what it needs to. Its focus is on cinematics over gameplay mechanics, and that's in like the same thing as that parry mechanic that you're talking about there. I didn't notice that was a thing, but I think it makes sense, and I actually think it's a good idea for what this game is. I think the combat is a huge success, and they've made good improvements to it. I don't think it's like wildly better than the first game, but it's like about as good with a couple little things there. And they only removed one element of the combat mechanics. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Visuals, I mean, I agree with you there. Game's freaking breathtaking, really beautiful. The sound design's fantastic, and the voice acting's great. All that stuff.
Yeah.
I was pretty let down with the story of this game, though, and that's where I'm ultimately going to be, I think, lower on this one than I was on the first game. There is that element of like, okay, what's real, what's not, and I feel like it's more clumsily done here, or like more...
Yeah.
Like, it is inherently a confusing thing, but I think it's more confusing in a way that I feel way less connected with the story. And that, like, the first one was like, man, I loved having that conversation of you, like, ooh, what is real? What isn't? Like, this thing that isn't real, like, what do we think what does it mean? Or how is it manifesting? All that stuff. I don't really like, so far in the last week, because I finished the game a bit ago, that I've been thinking about my time through the game. I'm not having fun thinking about the ambiguity of it. I'm just like, I feel like this is maybe a plot hole, or this doesn't really make sense, or I feel like kind of cheated in a way, even though I knew it was coming. And then, this game introduces characters. Like the first game, you could argue like there's only one character in the game, and everyone
Yeah.
else is just like imaginary or like part of
Ghosts,
Senua's
yeah.
memory. You know, and those ones are more real, but they were part of her past, right? This game introduces a lot more characters. I don't think really any of them add to the experience like a whole heck of a lot at all. And there's even a couple story points. Like, I'm not going to spoil the ending here, but Senua, you know, she's giving some like big, what's the word? A monologue. She's giving like a big monologue at the end. And I was like, what are you even talking about here? Like, is this what this game has been about? I feel like these themes that you're establishing here are like not things I was experiencing as a player. So the story felt really weird and disconnected and really lackluster to me. So yeah, like, you know, combat just as good as the first game, puzzles way better than the first game, but then story is a whole lot weaker. So I think it kind of balances out to this game being just a bit of a worse experience than the first one, but it's also shorter. So I guess it's, I don't know. I didn't find myself like as annoyed as I did playing the first game in that way. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at on it. Any other kind of non-spoilery things, or do you want to jump into some spoilers here?
No, I think we covered all that.
Okay, let's do that. Let's jump into some spoilers. Maybe we'll just start with combat, talking about that. Probably won't be too long. They pretty much have all the same mechanics here. It's the same as the first game. There's nothing really new. The only difference actually is they removed the kick element.
I know. I went that a couple times, like muscle memory, and I was like, "Oh, right, that's what they're." Yeah, and I didn't enjoy that they removed the kick. I like that animation. And another thing, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they removed one of my favorite attacks is when you would run with her and then do the sword. She'd do like a Superman, like in the air, and I don't think they have that in this game. At least
I think there is still like a running attack, but it's definitely
it's
less
the
of
same.
a big jumping dive that it was in the first one.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny, I didn't really miss the kick because as we talked about in the retrospective, I didn't even know there was a block button, therefore a parry button. And so it kind of like replaced that for me. And I don't know, I guess there was less, like there's a couple guys that have shields in this game, but that's usually what I was using the kick for in the first game, was to kind of take out a shield guy or a block or something. But I think I preferred using parrying instead. Or now that I like know how the focus works, I feel like I was really abusing the focus to just completely destroy enemies. But one thing I absolutely love about the combat, I think is so cool, and I hope other games steal this, is whenever, like one of the issues I had with combat in the first game was like certain arenas were kind of small and you get back into a corner and like the camera's like not aiming at the thing I want it to. This game never really puts you against multiple people at the same time. Instead, you're like doing a one-on-one fight, and then once you defeat that person, they'll be like this cutscene will pop in all of a sudden. It's like really good on the fly how it does it, where you're fighting someone, and then as soon as you kill that enemy, like maybe one of your companions gets like knocked to the ground by some other opponent, and then you go in there and kind of intercept, and then you start fighting that person. And it kind of just like throws these little cutscene transitions in that makes it like feel like a John Wick type fight for me, where just like every time you turn around, there's like some other guy doing something, about to strike at you, taking out a teammate, taking out some other guy that you're trying to save. And I just thought it made some of these very specific sequences that really like did that well. I thought were really, really cool and cinematic, and were just I don't know, really fun. Once again, the mechanics are very simple, but I just think it like visually looks so good. And like I think the camera, they dropped it a bit lower, and it like really follows the sway of the character, that I just thought was just perfect. So I thought the camera work was insanely good for the combat system here.
I agree, but that's what I noticed too. Like the camera being just almost more like closer to the hip in this opinion. Like it just felt like it felt like a bit more over the shoulder. But yeah, I agree with you. And I think also because I thought about this when we talked about the last review, where it felt like, one, you didn't have to worry about this, but when you're fighting multiple enemies, you would say like, oh, it's hard to focus on one. One, you're just fighting the one, and even then, two, I feel like they did a good job. If you get a hit or you move around, they're always kind of in your line of sight relatively. So
yeah, I never got like backed in a corner in a janky way like the first game.
And I think there's some, especially like the last fight you have, I think visually they do some really, really cool stuff, and they make, so I do like that change. Like I said, I do miss the kick. I miss that running knife. I don't like the like fake out parry thing. So yeah, there's a few aspects that lessen it for me, because the kick was at least something even added more variety. I could like throw in a strike, a heavy strike, and then a kick. Now it's just this heavy strike and the strike, so it was even less so. So, but no, I agree I think it was smart to make that change up, especially this one. Not that the other one wasn't a walking around big area game, but I think there's just something about this one that does fit a bit better, even though it is funny that you're lots of times versing one-on-one, and you would think this would be the time to put in multiple enemies when you have companions with you, because maybe you could do some things. But yeah, so for the most part, I was lower in the combat, but as we said before, I was already kind of lower on the first go around, so it was just something I wasn't fond of, and then it lessened it for me. So that's where it was it's not the most fun to play that way. And I will say before I can forget, there's lots of instances where they don't let you run, which was also just a little annoying for me, because they're definitely just slowing it down. Because
you mean in combat or just like in the world?
Just in the world, but I just wanted to throw it out because I knew I'd forget. But yeah, so there's a few just little changes like that throughout where the quality of life stuff were down for me that made it feel longer. So
my biggest like quality of life complaint in this game is that in the options there's no toggle run button. Like, this game needs that where you just tap left bumper and then you're running by default.
I agree.
I'm shocked that they don't have that kind of thing in here, because there's so many moments where you're like in that slower walking moment, because you're like walking with a companion or something, but if you hold the sprint button you still move a little bit quicker, but it's like so little that I'm like, I'm going so slow that I need to hit it, but I also like it moves me maybe 5% faster or something. So I found that annoying. But one thing I really liked about the combat was I just felt like the animations, I don't know, it seemed like almost like more of like a physics system where I feel like I was never seeing the exact same swings or finishers. Like, there'd just be little variations, and like, you have like kind of set combos that do types of things, but I just felt like the way she would actually swing the sword around was always like a little bit different, which once again was very cinematic and very immersive for me, that I just didn't feel like I'm seeing the same stock animation over and over again. And then like enemy variety we talked about in the first game, like there wasn't a ton of it. This game probably actually has like a little bit less than the first game, because there aren't really as many.
Visually too, I was like, they do some changes, but the first game, the visuals of them are so cool. I feel like there's a lot more just human people that look gross. They look like Davy Jones Locker people.
I can agree with that. And I feel like it's like they almost have like maybe potentially more enemy types, because there's just like, oh, this guy's 2 axes, this guy's like 1 axe, and they have like similar move sets, but once again kind of like these almost improv type animations to it. But then there's like not as many, like I think there's only 2 boss fights in this game, right? Like you fight this like what's his name, the son,
his
son's
name?
name?
Is his name
Thorgester, right?
Thorgester,
yeah. So you like fight him and then like his dad, and I think those are like the only 2 actual boss fights. Like when you're doing the giant stuff, like that's more of like cinematic. It's more of like almost like a platforming challenge or something than it is a combat challenge. So you don't have something like the dog from the first game, or like the double axe dude who was like always sprinting around, or like the big dude
Surtur.
Surtur, they add the like fire breather as like a new enemy type here, which and then like the creepy little like golem type dudes as well. They're always kind of scratching at you and whatnot. So the enemy variety I think is about the same quality as the first game, but I was kind of surprised that they didn't have as many boss fights, or at least like traditional like combat heavy boss fights. Maybe they just felt like, okay, these giant fights, we want to do something different with them, and like this is working. This is working and having that level of suspense, so we don't need those. But I don't think the boss fights were like my favorite part about the first game. I think the dog one was fun, but like Surtur, I kind of just found more annoying than anything else. So I guess I guess I'm not too mad that they took those out. But even the ones that there are here, I found this like, I don't think I died in this game once, whereas I died like a bunch of times in the first game. So I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it was just easier across the board.
Yeah, I could have used one more, maybe not, because I think the point of the giants, other than the dad they were trying to, which we'll get in the story-wise, almost not choose a violent route, but I still wish there was something a bit more to it. So I could have used one more, because I think the first fight to me wasn't much, because that just felt like it was so early on. They were just trying to get you to feel like, oh, if you remember the controls, and it just didn't feel that hard. So I wish there was one more in there.
I don't think I have anything else on the combat. Do you want to talk about some story here? Where do you want to start with the story? Do you want to characters, certain plot points, jump to the end? Where do you want to go?
The characters, I'll start there, because I'm with you where they worked a bit better near the end, but they still didn't work well enough. I think that is the problem with this game. I would love to see if there was a version of this. I don't think they would, and they're working on a different game, but if there was like a Hellblade 3 and they go like, and you couldn't do this because the visuals, it would take forever, but just like, we're going to make a 20-hour one or something like that. And that's where the multiple characters, I think they worked as well as they could, but for a while, especially oh gosh, what's the bad guy that starts at the beginning but he becomes your friend in the end, like
Thorgester.
Forgester. Like I was not digging that character for almost majority of it until the end where he really makes like a babyface turn. But so there are good little snippets. I think for me there is something where I think with there being kind of three giants in a sense and then three characters, I wonder if that's kind of like three personality traits. And if you look at each character, they kind of represent something. Like he is that exact same kind of dynamic that she does with her dad, right? Or kind of what we've been applied. The lady, what was her name? Bronahan or Bronin or
Astrid, I think.
Astrid? Who was Bronin then? I thought there was a Bonn.
And then Fargrimmer is like the village leader guy that kind of
Yeah.
takes you under his wing. But I don't know who Bronahan is. I'm not sure. Maybe you're thinking of, I think the clan is called, I forget what the Bergaverki is the name of like the city, or maybe it's his dad. I
There's a
wrote
lot of
some these
names here,
down,
so-
but now I'm like they're all over the place.
So right now they're just gonna be the warrior, the villager, and then the bad guy. But yeah, so with her, she's representing, I think, like the vicious kind of soldier fighting side, right? And you get to see that. And the villager, I think, it's just kind of representing the person that she almost wants to be in a sense, or the few little bits that she has in her that are just a good and caring person that would take people under the wing. Because I think that's what it was. That if it's the what's not real, then to me it's like the giants and these three people are just kind of variations of her personality or things she's been through. And then if they are real, I think the allegory is just that one, it's showing that you're not alone in mental health, like not only with help, it's just like there's many people that can be going through but have different issues, right? There's many clinical versions of mental health. It's not a one fits all type of size. I think it's also then with the giants to represent that there's even a line, I think they just spelled up like, oh, every monster started as a man. And that's where it is, right? Where without help, without support, maybe that's the route you can go. So I think those messages were good there. I think that's where you might need to be longer if you're doing a group one, or maybe lose one of the characters. So I think that stuff did work for me in the end, the multiple characters. I think the stuff of her not killing the dad and then being like, oh, she's overcoming the darkness. It's like, well, we've kind of done that before. And I think that's a good thing with the two giants. It wasn't, it was like the Batman thing where she's not trying to kill them. She's trying to find what's the best route. And one was, giving the infant bones, or the other one's just setting them free. Like, I think that was good of showing. That's where I said in the non-spoilers, it's like padding. It's showing, okay, she's not dark like her father, but I kind of already got that from the first game. So the multiple characters, I liked of seeing different sides of herself. Mental health was like a group discussion, but I think the other stuff about Senua's journey, they didn't nail per se. And the characters, I like, they were fine. But again, how much can you do with them? Especially some of the characters you're meeting 3.5 hours in, and then there's only two hours left, and a lot of them they go disappearing for, right? So sometimes it feels like it's like a slice of a second act of a game, but it's not. It's the full game. So
yeah, I think to break them down for myself, like Thorgester, who's kind of the slave master guy at the start, it's like it's pretty obvious what's going to happen with him. You know that he's going to be the good guy eventually. He's going to rise up against his dad and all this stuff, and I feel like it never really surprised me in what was happening with him, so I guess that's where I didn't connect with him. Fargrimmer, I liked him. He's a cool guy. He's like a father figure in this lost place, a father figure that Senua desperately needs, given her very toxic father. And then Astrid's a weird one because, as you mentioned, she's one that pops in way later in the game. And like the first time you meet her, you're hanging out with her, and then there's like a combat sequence, and she just leaves you. She just abandons you, and then you stumble upon her again 10 minutes later. So I feel like immediately I was like, well, fuck this character. Like, she just abandoned me. I don't care about her. I don't want to protect her. There's a point that I found pretty strange is when you go into the woods. I thought this sequence is pretty fun. Visually, I think it looked amazing. And you're going through, and then eventually, because you're with your whole crew at this point, and then at some point, and I was always turning around to make sure they were with me, and then at some point they go missing in the woods, and you're all on your own. I thought it was good that they tricked me in that way. And you're going around, eventually you find them, they feel like they've kind of lost themselves a little bit, or maybe they're like starting to feel the effects of psychosis. It's kind of unclear exactly what's happening. But you get to a moment where you have to choose between Fargrimmer and Astrid. I'm like, ooh, which one do you want to save? Do you want to go up the river, or do you want to go down the river? And which one? Yeah. And so you pick one, but then like 30 seconds later, you encounter the other one again. And then there never seems to be any consequence to that. And I don't know if it was like supposed to be really tugged at my heartstrings, but for me, I kind of hated Astrid after she abandoned me, and Fargrimmer always had my back, so it was an easy decision for me. And I didn't really care if I had to leave her behind. So I thought that was a weird moment that I don't know. Maybe it ties into like some decision that affects something later on. But from what I could tell, like nothing really seemed to happen in that way. So I was a little confused by that moment.
Yeah, I picked the same one you did because I'm like, okay, it's the journey that I think my character's on here. But I think that's where I thought, oh, we're gonna it's different because I thought, oh, this is where maybe we're gonna get something quite different with the game, but then I still thought of the runtime. I thought, well, you can't like, there's not that much. To me, this would have been an element that you'd introduce hour one, and then you go, oh, there's gonna be like some choose your own adventure type of
Right.
like telltale situations here, which I think wouldn't be bad for this type of game. That could have been a good angle for Hellblade 2 of like, hey, we can't exactly recapture the first one, so let's do it a little bit differently. But no, it was kind of a missed opportunity. I don't know if it was trying to do like the kind of lie to you again thing, like with the first game of, oh, if you die too many times. So it was, I think, maybe trying to hit on that, but that mechanic's just so good where you can't recreate that way. I'm not sure if it plays anything differently. I have heard that if you replay the game, it's a different narrator. So not that I'm going to be, but I don't think it would play anything to it. But that is a cool fact, which I think is cool. So
Yeah, I saw that there's, I think, 3 separate options there.
oh, really?
It's like Senua, it's your companions, and I think the other one is, I don't know if it's your father, but it's someone who's like not in the actual story. It's like almost just like a
Okay.
storybook narrator, like some omniscient presence or something, I'm pretty sure. So I think that's really cool. I mean, this is not a game I really want to replay because of the gameplay
Yeah.
of it. But I think that's a really interesting thing that it's there. And I did watch some YouTube videos of like certain moments that I kind of wanted to see what different narration would be like for specific things when I was more curious on what was going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, I want to jump to this right away, which is, we had that great conversation in the first game of talking about like, hey, what's real and what's not. And I just found that to be a lot muddier in this game because there are other characters. In that first one, you could make a case that there are actual people that you're fighting, but then like Senua is seeing it as like these monsters and whatnot. You could make a case for that, but there's really no evidence at any point that there's ever actually humans on this whole journey. She just goes to an isolated island, right? But in this game, it's like, it seems like it has to be the case that these people are real. Like, there's no way that all of these people are figments of her imagination, right? Like, I think if that is the case, then that seems like a really weird stretch that like she's created like hundreds of people in this world. So I have to assume they're real. But then I feel like that really throws off some of the story points for me, and particularly like, I love the concept that the slave master guy like created the idea of these giants to create the fear so that people would follow him and see him as their leader. But to me, it makes no sense whatsoever that everyone in this world believed that these giants were real, even though no one has ever seen them. And I know it's supposed to be like natural disasters, and they're kind of adding the personality of those. But then there's certain sequences, I know I'm going all over the place here, but we can break it all down. Like, there's one point where you're fighting that giant in like the watery cave, and you're chasing it. He's like following you out, and then you like throw spears at him, and then he follows him out, and then you go into the sequence. But it's like, are all those people then, like, are all those people figments of her imagination? Because Fargrimmer's there too. So is it just like a different Fargrimmer that's in that sequence, like an imaginary one? Like, that, it gets way too confusing for me. So I don't know. Maybe you can shed some light on it. But how did you feel about that angle of the kind of, is it real or is it not?
Well, yeah, I think if it was to kind of look at both of them, I think you could play the case of it is a mix and match, the same way we said, like, oh, these people are there, but maybe they're in this monster type of form. I think there's tons of stuff of her when she's in the cave. She's also in, like, different worlds, even some of the giant aspects where you could say, okay, most of the stuff is real, but even the fight with the father at the end, right, where that could be real, but all this other stuff's going on. But at the same time, because the characters all stem from almost something that she's been through, that's where I could see it's almost like an Inception moment where I can't remember what they call Elliot Page's character in that, remember
Like the architect, right?
the architect, yeah. So the way, sure, that seeing the dad, like the evil giant dad at the end, is like all these other characters, there's a kingdom, but it's also playing off something that's happened to her. So she's almost could be filling in the blank of thinking about, oh, this guy would have this dad, and he's kind of like this architect, and it's doing X, Y, and Z. So that's where, for me, I could buy that. You could say, oh, it's all made up, but I think it's a bit more unlike the first game, where I think there's things that could have happened, but there is more. The first game, I think it was linear as far as lots of stuff could not be real, but it's all happening at the same time, where it almost feels like there's little breaks of, okay, this is the unreal section, and now we're back to the real section. But then, like I said, I could see a perspective where it's almost like Inside Out, where these three characters are just certain personalities, and the giants, the bad guys, the dad, those are certain archetypes like that are bad things for her. So I think there's some stuff from what I gleaned on from this story and the last story where I go, okay, I could see. Now it's a very big world. That's that you're constructing a very high octane, lots of people, lots of, it's like you're making a video game, but you know, it's a hidden world. So I agree with you that it might be a little bit more messy, but I could see some sort of some patterns there, I guess, to get me to that point. So
with the giant, like the giants not being real, that being a creation, is that something you saw coming, or was it at the reveal when it made sense to you that it all clicked into place?
Yeah, no, I guess I didn't really think about that because I just didn't really think about the giants being real yet either. So that's where I didn't analyze it too much, because it's like we're seeing these, we're hearing them talking about, but it's like, one, is it an urban myth? Two, is this just still in her head and these people are talking about a giant, but they're just fueling her thoughts? So I didn't think of the dad saying, oh, I've created this thing about the giants. But at the same point, I wasn't looking into it because of the way her mind works. I didn't want to look into it because it might not. It's like an unreliable narrator, right? So it's hard to think about it in a, like, I could at any point think about, oh, the giant's not real, and be like, yeah, okay. Just even in the sense of the dad didn't say like all this was made up, I could believe that because of certain things she's gone through. So yeah, it wasn't something I caught, but it wasn't something I was diving too much into as well either.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's really just that cave scene with the spears getting thrown at that one giant. Like, to me, that's just like a damning plot hole moment. It's really hard for me to get over that in terms of other characters not realizing this, or like, you know, a world where everyone in this world has psychosis and they're all like seeing things. You know, that could make sense. I guess there's the idea of like, I don't know, the shared consciousness. If you people are saying it, you start to believe it and whatnot. Yeah, but like, there's a difference between like, oh, there's some rumblings in the ground, and that makes sense. Oh, maybe it's a giant hitting us from underneath. But if it's like, if we're all throwing spears at a giant thing, like, like, what are we talking about here? Like, I don't understand how that's supposed to make any sense. But one thing I really did like about that is kind of the way that connects with the first game, and how Hela in that game is a giant, very much like this. And we talked about how it's like, okay, maybe that's what the story is telling us there, is that like Senua is seeing herself in Hela, and that's who like she's going to become if she goes down this path, down this darkness. And I think that is like something that was really well done in the first game, and I really like the idea that we're kind of taking that idea more here, where like these people that are alive in this world, like they come up with these characters of these other people that become the giants, and presumably those people just like died in a cave somewhere, right? And that's where they went, and that's why their body was never found or something, and then people kind of imagine them to be these giants. But I think it's an interesting idea, and that was something before the reveal happened of, oh, these giants are actually real. Like, I wondered, is that something that's going to happen to Senua in this game? Like, are we going to go down this dark path and like turn into a giant ourselves? Whether that's
that would have been a good set piece.
Yeah, whether that's an imagined thing or a real thing, if the giants actually are a literal thing in this world. So I really liked that kind of mirroring between Hela, the giant in the first game, and the giants here. And then I also thought it was really cool that the final boss fight isn't against a giant. Like, you're seeing cool like flashes and weird imagery and stuff.
Yeah.
But I like that you're just fighting the guy at that point, which is, you know, very symbolic of what's to happen. So it's like, yeah, some of these parts are like really, really well done, and I just find it hard to connect all the dots in a really cohesive way. So I don't know, maybe I need to like hear the developers explain their perspective or something and get some other takes, or maybe even just these other narrators could honestly fill in the gaps. So maybe I'll check out some more of those YouTube videos. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, talking about some of those moments, like I thought though the sequences when you are fighting, you're not really fighting the giants, but you're more like, okay, you find out about their identity and you're going to go through this sequence. I thought they were cool. I think the lava one was my preferred between the two. I just thought it was cool.
Very
hiding
cool.
behind the lava and then like smashing those giant chains was really cool. And that character was so freaking creepy. The way she would like exorcism, like contort upside down and all around, spin her head.
Bad teeth too. When she was up close to you, they were sharp and jagged and whatnot. Oh.
Yeah, that sequence was brutal. But I liked both of those giant sequences. I thought they kind of matched the epic nature that they needed to with like the environment element of it. So
Yeah, no, I like those. I like it. It's the only thing that it's you got to do what you got to do. But it felt funny where the lava one and the water one, they felt very similar in the layout. It's felt like because it's just like even like little rocks in the ground and where the giants were, and then it was like everything else around it was different. But I still love them both. Definitely the lava one because I feel like they didn't do more of this. We wanted them like that one hell section in the last game.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted more of that, and I was like, oh, we're gonna get it here. We really didn't, and even then it wasn't as trippy. So but I enjoyed that. Just like the color of it just looked. I'm not in the
The
world.
music
But
syncing with the explosions too
yeah,
is such a cool moment.
yeah, and again, I think it's one of those things that's like we didn't mention, but it's just like we talked about a bunch in the first game. Like the audio design again, just flawless and home run
Mm-hmm.
stuff. You know, it's like they're I don't talk about because like I don't have enough descriptive words to talk about how good it is, and I hope they win a lot of technical stuff down the road. But yeah, just even visuals, they make it look like it's warm there. But yeah, I think my standouts were that one. I like the water one. I really liked after the lava one. There was like a kind of it was back and forth, but it was like almost like a Northern Lights sort of sequences where the sky was very kind of rainbowish and stuff. And it's good because the game does, I think, do a good job. The first one did that too, where there'll be big moments and then you kind of have some quietness going on. The cave I liked for the most part. I think I was in there a little too long. I think they could have cut that down, but
Mm-hmm.
there's some really cool, just like you put an orb there and then it just lights up and everything. So I again, visually stunning, but there's also just some sequences that are very good. Where I think the first I was gonna say the first 2 hours, but even then, I'll give credit to like the boat crash scene. I really like that with the waves crashing and the rocks,
Mm-hmm.
and you're bumping into innocent people or the slavers you got to fight. I think that's a really good opening as well. So maybe it's a bit more underrated mode of this game, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we're very similar in some ways and total opposites. Like just on everything today, the state of play, this. But I think the cave was my favorite sequence. I know you liked it. You just went on a bit too long, but I just thought like visually, I love in a situation like this when you just keep going down and down and down and down. It's a very like Dark Souls kind of thing too. But I just really liked that. I really liked the visuals, and I think those are my favorite puzzles with like the braziers that you're
Okay.
kind of putting extinguishing and relighting to create new pathways and whatnot. I thought those whole sequences worked pretty well for me. And then I just like the creepiness of like those little creatures that were down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really fun sequence as well. Another element with the story. So jumping to that monologue that I mentioned at the end, maybe I got to listen to it again, but like, and it's pretty long. But
Yeah.
Senua was talking about like, oh, we are not our parents. Like we can make our own choices and do our own take
Just a
our
good
own
message.
path.
That all works. So,
But like, what does that have to do with the game that I just played for 8 hours? Like I know the slave master guy and he like rebelled against his dad.
Yeah.
But like, how was that Senua's journey? Because I know the dad's in this game again. He's talking a little bit, not as much as the first game. But I just felt like this was not the central theme of this game, and I don't really know why this is part of like the final monologue as you see us on the way out here. It seems like a really weird place to leave off. So I feel like I was maybe just missing some context. Like maybe Astrid and Fargrimmer all had like some element about this to their character as well, but I just felt like it seemed really out of place and strange.
No, I agree. That's where I said I felt like it was again padding the first one of that's a journey they went on, and it comes into a very tough situation, right? Because it's this whole thing. Well, she's not gonna execute this king, and she's not gonna be your dad, but at the same time, it's like one, you kill a lot of people in this game, and execute them, and also at the very beginning of the game, not the very beginning, but once the slaver's son, you get him. There's a moment where she ties him up and says, "Oh, how do you like it?" But she thinks about killing him. So already in the first act of the game, she's choosing not to just blood. So that's where I think the theme they should hit on more was what others go through and how you can help one another and be there for one another. I think there is still a theme of not being your father's son or the sins of your father passing that.
Yeah.
But I think they could have just made that his journey almost, and her echoing that and treating that. Like I think her journey could have been helping other people and realizing that not so much like, oh, you don't want to be a killer, just that, okay, yes, it's great to look after yourself, but if there's others that need your help, you can give them a lending hand, and then it kind of is a je ne sais quoi, goes all the way around. So I think I like those themes, but I agree with you when we got to that, it gets muddy because I think it's tough in a game, and that's where I said with the combat, maybe take out some of it because it's tough in a game where you're killing people. Because I think the story beats of her not killing him and tying him up first and then along the journey, her trying to help the giants set free instead of killing them, they all fit. But then the combat of the game, you got to execute people, you're slitting throats, so it's kind of a mishmash of this doesn't exactly line up. So I agree with the ending monologue, even though well acted, well written, it's visually very cool going on. I feel like it doesn't exactly work here. So
I also felt that way too. There is multiple moments where, like especially early on in the game, where you're like going through the sandy beaches as you crash onto the shore, and like people are dying left, right, and center, and the voices and like your father's voice are being like, "You let these people die. It's all your fault," and it's like. That doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, there's a couple people that maybe I could have saved if I was a bit quicker or something. But for the most part, it's like I am objectively saving more people than who would have all just died were I not here. And so I know in her head that guilt would still, weigh on your mind to some extent. But I just felt like it was pressing the issue a bit too much. Of like, I never really felt like it would have been more impactful if they threw a really difficult combat encounter at you, and if you didn't perform well in it, someone did die in front of you, and then it's like, okay, now lay the guilt on, because I feel like it's a bit more earned at that point. But if you're just like having a cutscene of someone dying 200 feet from me, it's like there's no way I possibly in any world could have saved that person. So that guilt angle isn't really working for me.
I think the only reason that works somewhat for me is just because in the first game they established it that the dad is someone that took advantage of her mental health. So I feel like that's something that people do in real life where, oh, you had nothing to do with this, but I can hit on this and make you feel really bad and make you twist it. So that's where it still worked for me. Of like, this guy is just a twister of emotions. And I was surprised that we talked about the first game, we didn't get much of those like people in real life in the game, not really at all.
The live action sequences, I didn't even think about that, but you're right.
We didn't get any of that, so I thought there was a couple opportunities to do that. So that stuff all worked for me, but I just mentioned that because the dad this time was like a cloaked figure for most of the game in this one. He looked like a Nazgul pretty much.
I more like just recognized his voice, but I never even thought about physically. I didn't really see him at all. How about we take our next break? We'll be right back for some more Hellblade. Okay, we are back. So early on in this game, you go through a little town, which I thought it was. I just like going through little towns, so I like this little town here. It's when you tie up the slave master guy, and then you're going around, and then you come across some ruins, and I was like, oh god, I'm gonna fucking hate this game. Like, I'm seeing the ruins already. So you go do a rune puzzle. But then, thankfully, like, I don't think you really do another one for a bit, and the game never really does overuse them, and I thought that was really nice. But I think they made up for that. If someone was missing that from the first game, I was not. I thought one thing that I loved in this is they still had the lore stones where you can go around and read those, and that same guy will talk to you and fill you into stuff. But then they also had these I don't know what they're called, but they're little trees that you go and find, a little sapling essentially hidden away. And that is another character's voice giving you other lore stone type stuff. But I thought those were so cool where they were always hidden behind this face in the environment. And so you'd go around and in the rocks, you'd see like, oh, that kind of looks like a face a little bit. And then you focus on it. And then it kind of like in a very Inception way, like zooms out. And then it turns into like a hallway that you can walk down. That was cool every single time. And I love that it was not a mandatory thing that's like, oh yeah, fuck around in this environment for 20 minutes until you find the one specific thing that we want you to look at from this specific angle. But instead, like, I'm in my head always tripping out playing this game like, oh, is that a face over there? Oh, no, that's not a face. That's just some random tree over there. Then, oh, maybe I would actually find one and I'd go down this cool path. So to me, that's like, that took the lesson of like, yes, perspective puzzles can be cool, but if they're forced upon you and you have to go find them, they're a lot less impactful than like if you're just playing naturally and seeing something out of the corner of your eye and it's like in the back of your head constantly. Of like, oh, am I seeing this thing? Am I not? And I don't know about you, but like it has the little counters of how many you've got. Like it lights up a certain symbol. I missed so many lore stones in this game and almost all the trees too. Like there are so many I didn't see in the lore stones. They weren't really hidden in the first game. They were more just like on the side of your critical path. So they hid them a lot better this time.
Yeah, no, I can't remember because I did a couple of those, but I was trying just to trek along, make sure I was there. But I think it's cool to have because I think it is something too that, like we said, if you really like the game and want to do a second playthrough, then that's stuff to really look up for. You can take your time more. But I think the stone faces were very cool because the very first, like you said, there's one in particular. I can't remember where it was, but it was almost like a darker scene. And it's the same thing. Like, is that a face? Is that not a face and stuff? And it was a face once I got there. It looked more, but it's a fun thing. I think in this game, especially with the giants having bigger features, it kind of fits with that theme too of like big rocks.
And in the first game, you're always seeing your mother's face in different rocks.
Yeah.
That kind of brings those scenes to life.
Yeah. So I think it worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other mistake here in like the first game we talked about this where you do the lore stone, the guy would be talking to you, but if you wander too far away, even if there's no other dialogue or story stuff, it would fade out. These ones, if you go a meter away, it immediately fades out and you can't listen to it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really listen to any of these. So, but from what I did listen to, because I tried listening to the tree ones because I was curious how those would differ. Once again, I didn't really see that connecting much with like the narrative that was going on, and maybe it's because I was missing a lot, whereas in the first game I got almost all of them just because they were kind of in obvious spots. But I don't know, did you ever, when you did find one of those, listen to those, get any interesting tidbits or lore from those?
No, I listened to a couple and then I was on my I was on my way because I feel like they are good but not good enough. Again, I just wish they played while we continue to walk. That'd be the best thing. But I get it. It's good immersion. So.
Another thing that I found interesting, like in the first game, as we talked about, it's like pretty much a one-shot game, kind of like God of War in that. It's like one extended. This game is not that case. In fact, there's like 3 or 4 time jump sequences, and each of them are just like a couple hours pass and you journey down the road. And it doesn't really explicitly say that, but it just feels like it. But I always thought they were visually really cool, and they kind of kept that one-shot angle to it where Senua would be looking out at some horizon, some beautiful just rocks and some beautiful environment, islands. And then like the camera would like zoom out into the sky, almost like a bird's eye view, and just zoom around this beautiful environment. And then kind of like eventually would zoom back in, and Senua and her crew would have been, a few hours further down the road. So I thought that was a really cool, unique way to do a time jump sequence. And I'd like to see something like that from like open world games that have fast travel, to have some element like that where it's like almost taking you on that journey artificially rather than just a loading screen. With these consoles and the ability to have really fast loading, I think is something that I'd like to see other games do. So I really liked that visual touch to it.
Yeah, it was cool, and I think it was fun to not be a one shot kind of in a way they did the first game. You don't have to be beholden to that. So I think it all worked there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. There are other puzzles, but I don't think there's much to break down there. Like there's the orb ones that kind of flip environments. I thought those ones were pretty cool. There's the one that, the braziers, which kind of create platforms and then remove them. I think there's probably less to talk about here than the first game because, like, as you mentioned, they are a lot easier and they're almost more like mindless in a way. They're kind of just like busy work, but since they're not overused, I never found them tedious or just there for padding. So
I was glad
I don't really have any issues with any of them, but they all... I don't know. They're good enough.
I was glad there wasn't, like the last game, an abundance of those stupid portals you'd have to walk through and do like the changing environments. I think
nothing was like it took so long to run around just to try and figure it out, which I think was a nice improvement there.
Yeah.
Any other points here, Travis?
No, and like I said, I don't know if I mentioned enough. I think I mentioned a little bit. Performance is all still great. It's one of those things where it's just like, I know she's won it before, but it's kind of tough that when you get to the Game Awards and those things, it's like, how else can you compare anything to like this route? It's tough.
Yeah, like what, Final Fantasy, Yakuza. I'm trying to think the other big story games.
And I just don't think maybe like that main character in Star Wars could have some like moments and stuff because like Spider-Man gets back. I just feel like
Cal Kestis, that guy's always getting a nom.
He's always getting like I just feel like it's such a different level, but especially voice acting too, great stuff, and she does a good job. And like we talked about last week, I'm curious to see if she will be in their next game, or I don't know. She should go and try and get an agent and maybe try and do some actual not real life, but live action acting. Like stuff that's in TV shows or But no, it's all that stuff is very crisp, and it's still again. I still think it's like a very well made game from a technical standpoint. So. But I think on specifics, we talk about puzzles, combat, story. I don't think there's anything else we haven't hit on that I wouldn't have one hit on.
Do you want them to make another Hellblade?
Nope. Not with Senya, I'd say, actually. That's
Okay.
what I'd say. I think you could do something in the world, but I don't know if I need another of Senya's journey. Even if she was maybe a supporting character, you could do something, a long time jump of maybe you're the daughter of Senya, like something like that. But I
Mm.
don't think, one, I think a break, and that sounds stupid to say because the last game was 7 years ago. So it's like not that it's like, oh, they're pumping
Yeah.
out these Hellblade games. Like, no, just like, I think they're working on that new game. Hopefully Xbox lets them do what they do because I think there's just like definitely a company that they should provide lots of resources to. And I don't think there's anything bad about small games, but I do look at this in the first one and go, I think there's a potential that Xbox could have their like Last of Us with these people. But
Yeah.
are they
This
going to
is
give
good for
them?
their portfolio. Like,
Yeah.
their other studios aren't making games like this.
Yeah. But are they going to give them that chance to make that type of game? I don't know. That's the thing, right?
Game looks expensive when I'm playing it.
Yes, and I don't know how many people are gonna like. There's Games Pass, then by itself is $50. I personally can say, oh yeah, it's worth it because of the craftsmanship. But if you're asking me what you spend $50 on and it's a 7-hour game, it's like that's hard for me to pitch you, right? That's hard for me to sell you on why you should. Then I would just like get Games Pass. But I'm just saying if you didn't have Games Pass, whatever. So yeah, the rumor I think is the next game is like a horror game, which I'm like, that sounds great. Like them making some with horror, that I think could really, really do some special stuff. So I hope Xbox just supports this team. I hope we're not in 2 years talking about them being laid off or they're doing this and that.
Yeah.
And because I just think the horror game should happen, but I do think they should. It sounds weird, but give them more funds and let them do something big. I think they could have like I think there is a version. It sounds weird, but there is like a Last of Us length version of a Hellblade game that could be the big breakout. Combat a little bit better, a few little things there. Characters get to flush out. So that's what I mean. The Hellblade world. I think there's stuff to it. I think it's just that maybe not 3. So and I already thought with her journey specifically, there was a risk of what can you cover here, and I think they were close enough to. I think we have a few examples of maybe there wasn't too much meat on the bone that they already hadn't done. So that's why I think something in this world, but other situations, characters, places, etc. So
Yeah, I don't think need to see a third game either. I do like your idea of switching to another character's perspective, and I think it'd be cool if the through line was the mental health angle and the character who has some other mental health thing, and that can be like the lens from which the character's perspective and story is told and how they grow and go and struggle through that. I think could be really cool. I feel like the first game too, like it had a not a cliffhanger in the sense that like you knew what was going to happen next, but like Senua was like, all right, I'm gonna go do some shit. Like she very
stories.
yeah. And this game has a bit of that too, where she's like, I fight for the people who cannot fight for themselves. But it felt a little bit more of like, I could see this being the end point and being content with that. Whereas where I think the first game, it would be like, oh, really? That's like a bit too cliffhangery for my liking. So, but at the same time, I think there's enough room there where they really could go for a third game. But yeah, I'm kind of wanting something new, something different. And yeah, I think like they obviously showed their strengths here, but it seems like even before this game, like as we talked about in the first Hellblade Retro, like they have such a history with intense combat games, and I'd just like to see some of the stuff because I really like what was here, but I think which is more variety, more depth could be cool. But yeah, even just like I don't know, try and do something a little bit different. Could be something nice to see. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they do next. I hope this game has been a success. I don't know, like it's hard to gauge with numbers and Game Pass because Xbox isn't like releasing a lot of numbers these days, and Game Pass always skews things. But yeah, I hope this game is a big success, and I'm excited for their next thing. I think I gave the first game a 7, so I think I should give this a 6.5, a little bit lower than the first one overall. Where are you at? You want to throw a number?
It's tough. So like the first game I gave a 9. From like my standpoint of the enjoyment of a game, I think I'm like a 7. But then if I were to like, if you ask me like, what's your score of like critically, I'd have to go an 8 because like the full visuals give it like a full point. Like it's even more than a point, but I just feel like a 7 feels too low to give it. But Because I think there's certain things they're doing very well in this game and stuff, certain visuals, voice acting, that's tippy top stuff. So I wish I could get it to a little bit higher. So I'm in that 7, 8. So I guess maybe I'll just call it a clean 7.5, like somewhere meet in the middle. If you want to put if I win the lottery and gun to my head, but no, it's still good. But I think that I'm not gonna say I would never play these games, because maybe there'll be a time in my life where I'd want to go back there smaller, and maybe if the next game comes out and I want a refresher or it's disappointing, I think there's some visuals in here that I will want to see again at some point in my life, especially if they do like 10 years from now we got better consoles and like, oh, it's an upscale, even you got your 80K and you're like, oh, what does this look like now,
and you can play as one of the other narrators, so you can still get like a different varied experience too.
Yeah, so there's some stuff there. So no, I'm glad I played these, and they are, I think they are special games, but I think it's tough because they are, like we said, they're in a very wiggle room of game experience, walking sim. It's its own type of genre that's not like a uber popular one, because we even talked about 2 weeks ago with Death Stranding, where there's tons of people that would say the same thing, where, oh, I appreciate it, but that's not a good game for me, because like I just don't enjoy playing that type of game, right? So that falls in that category of, this is one where if someone said this is 10 out of 10 my favorite game of the year, I would say, oh, I get it. If someone said, oh, I hate this game, I'll never play again, I kind of get it, right? It's not a one size fits all, but I appreciate that, and I hope that Xbox lets them do more of that. And I hope that, like I said, I think from the visuals we talked about, like the giant, just other things, some of the enemy types, like a game in a horror type of setting, I think they will do gangbusters there. I think that could be really, really fun. And again, even the audio, this audio at sometimes is even creepy enough, and it's not even sometimes supposed to be creepy. Imagine in a game where you're in the dark and you move around, there's little like, I'm very excited to see what they could do if these rumors are true. So I look forward to the future, and I'm happy we did these, because we've talked about these for years. So
yeah, definitely. I'm really glad that I finally knocked these off the list. I'm glad I've played them, and yeah, it gets me excited for Ninja Theory's next title. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Travis, for joining me here on this fun retro into review combo. And yeah, we will be back next week for some summer game fest, some Xbox showcase, all sorts of stuff. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.